Please, let's welcome Clare Muireann Murphy.
Hello. Hello. I have no idea what's been going on in this tent because I was over there. Have you been in love yet? Some confusion. These people have, this person hasn't. Have you been in love yet in the stories tonight? I reckon there's probably always room for a bit more love. Yes, yeah, this section is definitely with me on that. All right, let's go then. Let's go not so long ago. Not so long ago, there was a young man. This young man lived in a village. And this was before a lot of the technology that we have these days. This young man was coming to a very important age. He was about to become 17. Yes. You remember 17? Some of you are 17. Do you remember that? Do you remember that feeling of power just coursing through your body? Mixed with hormones, lots of synapses, and quite a bit of confusion, and a dash of immortality. Yeah, you remember? Well, that's where he was, right at that edge. And as he turned 17, he knew that he was going to be able to go down to the dance hall. The dance hall that was between his village and the next village and that village and this village, and it's where everybody met. It's where he would meet the young women. He was quite excited about this. He bought himself a new shirt. He got himself ready. A new shirt was a very big investment in those days. He lived in a little house with his father, and his father knew this was the big night, and then all his friends at the door. Hey. Hey. Everybody ready, but nobody looking too excited. You coming? Yeah. And they all began the walk, way before Reservoir Dogs. Boom, 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 boom. And as they walked down, none of them knew what to expect. You know, they had all heard stories about what happened in the dance hall. They're pretty sure dancing happened, and they were pretty sure there were girls there. That was about the extent of their knowledge. The rest was all fantasy. They got to the door. There were several doors on this dance hall where people entered, and they got to their side, and they stepped in. Nothing could have prepared them for that, what they saw. It was a huge village hall, little table at the end for drinks. On one side, all the young men. On the other side of the room, all the young women. Separate. You know? In between the two of them, this huge, empty chasm of death. Now, some of you might be familiar with the chasm of death. If you've ever liked somebody, doesn't matter where the chasm of death is. It might be in a coffee shop, you know, it might be in a restaurant, might be online these days, but this chasm of death was in the middle of the dance floor, and all the lads were certain that if they stepped out, they would die. So they didn't. They just stayed pretty close to the wall, and they had their cider, or their beer, and they were all hungry. Yeah, how you do? Yeah, no, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, no, it's great. And all the girls on the other side doing the same thing. Oh yeah, oh, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's great, it's great. Pity there's no dancing. About halfway through the night, one of the lads saw a girl he liked the look of. Everyone was watching. He crossed carefully, He got to the other side, he stood in front of her, he said, "Hey." She said, "Hi. Do you want to dance?" "Yeah." And they started to dance. And he hadn't died. This was exciting news to all the young men on this side of the hall. They started nudging each other. Hey, what about her? What about her? So they all said, "Do you want to?" "Yeah." Except for our young man. Our young man, he wasn't moved. They were nice and all, but he wasn't moved. It was late in the night. The door on the other side. And in stepped this young woman. Long flowing hair. Eyelashes you could sweep the floor with. Every guy in the place. And they were all watching her. And she went over to her friends. And she was very beautiful. She really knew how beautiful she was. So she had to actively participate in being disinterested in everything. So she was standing there sort of looking bored. And our young man, he had to step out. And you could see all the young men were thinking the same thing. So it was kind of a race. Agitation, nerves, anxiety, fear, and then he got there first. Do you wanna dance? Yeah, I guess. And so he began to dance with her. And as they danced, he said everything he could to impress her. And at the end of the night, he wouldn't let go of her hand. He said, Wait, are you free? May I call on you tomorrow? This was the beginning of the courtship. This was serious. This meant marriage, if he played his cards right. And she said, yeah, I guess. And she went home. And so the next day, he cleaned the one good shirt that he had, put it back on, and he went and he called on her and held her hand, and they walked and they talked, and he did everything he could to impress her. And she agreed to meet the next week. And the next week. And the next. For 6 weeks. And on the 6th week, then he had the right to ask the question, would you like to meet my family? That was the next step. She knew that was serious, so she said, yeah, I guess. He brought her home. He only had his dad. It was just him and his dad in the cottage. And he got back, and his dad was sat in the back garden on the old bench, and he saw the two of them come in, and the young man was about to introduce the young lady when the old man said, young lady, come sit down. Boy, go get me the boulder at the bottom of the garden. What was that? His father said, son, are you going deaf? Get me the boulder, the big rock. It's been in our garden, go get it. Oh, the boulder that's been in our garden since I was born and is buried in the earth. You just want me to go? Yeah, no problem. It was huge. It was sucked into the ground, had always been there. But the boy could feel the young woman's eyes on him, so he reached down and he got his fingers. And as he lifted, he could feel the boulder just starting to, free itself from the earth. But then it was so heavy, and his hands started to shake, and then he dropped the boulder. And he heard his father say behind him, do you really want to marry a weakling like that? And then he heard her answer, no, I really don't. And she got up and she left the garden and she left his life. The young man was heartbroken and betrayed by his own father. Couldn't look at him. Just went into the house. And he thought to himself, if he ever pulls that again, I'm going to be ready. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to be ready. He lay in bed all night. Got up the next morning. He knew what to do. He went out on the moors and he got some rocks. He built them in piles of different sizes. And he just started lifting them. You know, working the muscles. Homemade gym, first homemade gym ever. Triceps, biceps, quadriceps. I'm not sure what the muscles are called. I don't go to the gym, but he did, and he worked out all his muscles for a month until he was rippling. He was absolutely rippling, and he was ready. The next dance, the young men, and our young man. Hey, you ready? Yeah, let's go. Walked in, got to the hall, walked in, all the women on one side, all the men on the other. And our young man waited. He ignored the really beautiful women. He decided they were too much work. He waited until a pretty one came in. And she was like, oh, shit. He thought, yeah, all right. Would you like to dance? They danced, they talked. At the end of the night, can I call on you tomorrow? Yes, she said. He called on her. They walked and talked for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, he said, would you like to meet my father? And she said, oh, yes. And so he brought her to his house. And funnily enough, his father was sat out in the garden. And the old man looked up and he saw the young woman. He said, oh, young woman, come have a seat here, boy. Go get me the boulder at the bottom of the garden. Yes, I will. Walked down, working out his muscles as he went, warming them up. Got there, got his hands around that boulder, and it came free pretty quick. All that work had started to pay off, and he was trying to lift it more than an inch, and he started to shake. He started to shake, feel the weight of it, pulling on his back, and he just slipped from his sweaty fingers. And he heard his father say, you really want to marry a weakling, can't even lift a rock? And the pretty girl said, no, I definitely do not. And she left the garden. And she left his life. And our young man, that was too much. He went to his room. He stayed in his room. He closed the windows. He closed the curtains. He closed the doors. He wouldn't go out. He wouldn't see his friends. Wouldn't go to the dances. For 3 months, he stayed in his room. 3 months. Swore off women. Nothing but trouble. Never going to a dance again. I'm going to live my life alone. His friends got worried. On the 4th month, they showed up at the door. They wouldn't leave. They said, you're coming with us. He said, I'm not asking any girls to dance. That's fine, they said. But you can come and have a drink. All right. But I'm not talking to women. Got down to the dance hall. Went to their side. Someone handed him a cider. He didn't even look up because he wasn't interested. He talked to his friends. He was drinking. Some of them went out dancing. Not him, though. He wasn't going. Never again. And then he heard something. And without meaning to, he looked up and he looked across because he heard a laugh. You know the people that have the kind of laugh that just infects you? You know? I've heard a few today around Jonesborough. This kind of giggly, bubbly, belly laugh. And he heard one of those and he couldn't help it. He just looked up and looked across. And as he looked across at the person making the laugh, she noticed and she looked at him. And she was kind of mousy brown hair and a lot of freckles and, so-so. And as he looked at her, she looked at him at the end of her laugh and she went, and she raised a glass. And so he, and then he noticed out of the corner of his eye that she gave her glass to her friend and she did something that no girl had ever done in that dance hall before. She stepped out and she made her way over and she went right up to him and she said, hi, do you want to dance? He didn't want to dance. No part of him wanted to dance. But he knew how much it cost her to risk herself like that. So he said, yeah, all right, let's dance. And as they were dancing, he said something. And it must have been funny because she laughed. And it was a beautiful sound. So he said something else, and she laughed again. And he just started making her laugh. And by the end of the night, he looked at her and she looked at him. And she said, are you free to go walking tomorrow? And he said, yeah, see you tomorrow. And they saw each other every day for 6 weeks. And on the end of the 6th week, he didn't ask her. On the end of the 7th week, he didn't ask. On the end of the 8th week, he didn't ask. Because he didn't want it to end. By the 9th week, she was looking real hurt, like maybe he was just using her. So he saw her face and he said, do you want to meet my family? She said, yes. All right, come on, let's get it over with. They got to his house, his dad was sat in the back, and his dad said, oh, young woman, come and have a seat. She sat down. Boy, go get me that, yeah, I know, the boat at the bottom of the garden. And he bent down. And he was furious, because he knew his joy was just about to end. Grabbed onto that boulder, it was a hot day. The sun was burning his brow, he was sweating, and he grabbed on it, and his hands were shaking, they were already sweating, and he was trying to lift it up, and he just knew that this was it, this was the end. And then a shadow crossed over between him and the sun, and 2 hands dropped on the other side of the boulder, and he looked up into the most freckly face he'd ever seen, and together they lifted up the boulder. It was easy. And from behind him, a voice said, now son, that's a woman you want to marry.